Aw. All right, well, let's jump in. Guys, welcome back to the show. Today I have on a personal friend and also just such a lovely guest, Miss Ayesha Sehra. You are this incredible CEO behind Grow the Social, a beautiful PR agency out here in LA. And you also are the podcast host of Coffee and a Good Vibe, which is honestly more like an experiential podcast than it really is like a podcast.
No, I know. It's like literally a live events podcast now.
I love that though, because honestly, I feel like it's so cool what you've done with it and how you've grown it. But before we go and dive into all this, I want to hear how you started the agency. And I want to hear a little bit about your Canadian background and what it was like for you to come over to the United States and start a business.
Oh, we're going right into it.
We're going to jump right in.
Thank you so much for having me. You literally are such a abundant, bright light, and you do the most. Like, literally, when I walked in, I was like, you have a killer agency, a podcast. You are just such a connector, and I'm just so grateful we're in each other's lives.
Yes, same.
You know, so it always presents like mirrors, you know.
Always.
But let's go there. I give this story a lot, so I feel like I can like speed it up too, and just give high level, and we can go into the nitty gritty. But specifically on the agency, so I'm a Canadian. If you know, if you're Canadian or you're someone who's from another country, if you want to live in the States, you want to do business here, you can't just move to the States and start a business. Mm-hmm. You have to be a U.S. citizen or get a visa. So for me, I was in my early 20s. I remember being 21, coming to LA with friends, you know, like everyone does, like that little trip when they first go to LA and they're like, oh my god, it's sunny, it's warm, celebrities, oh my god, like I want to live here. Everyone has that dream, like so. And you know, I'm an Aries. I'm very stubborn and set in my ways, and it served a lot on the business side because I was set on LA. I was like, I want to live here, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make it happen. Well, when I started educating myself around how to do that, the options were either like you have to get a visa, so kind of going into different visas without going into it. Also, I will say, like, this for context is like 2018, so this is very recent, because before, when you wanted to live in the States, like our parents' age, it was a different process. And also my journey was, once Trump was elected, he changed the immigration laws, so it was actually, I remember my year, I was like, oh, this is the first year, like, the Trump, it's like only a fresh in a year. So even looking at, like, trying to get advice from people who did it 3 years ago, it was different. Because different rules. So I also feel like I've become such a wealth of knowledge in this with the newer guidelines that I, like, love to share. And also, I'm, like, so not political, because I'm so grateful to live in this country. So I just feel like I'm so grateful that everything worked out with the visa. But for me, long story short, I was very young, but people were like, go to school. But if you go to school, you have to do a full course load, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I only want to be here.
So you're like, oh, wait, maybe not the full-time school
Literally
thing.
not. And then also, when you're on a visa, if you're on an O1, if you're on a student visa, it is very strict. Like, you can only be in school. You cannot legally work.
Wow.
Yeah, or if you're on an O1 and you're here for modeling, you can only model. It's, like, very particular. And then when COVID happened, a lot of people who were on O1s or student visas, they were sent back to Canada or wherever they're from because, like, I get it too. I'm not speaking, I'm just like sharing. I get it. Like the US, it's like, what? You don't need to be here.
Yeah.
Like, you can go be remote now.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. And I'm always such a stickler of, like, follow the rules and play the game. Like, I understand as Canadians, we're very lucky compared to other countries where you can come to the States for 6 months every year, but you can't work. That's the other thing. It's like, you can't technically, legally, I know people do it, but legally, you can't have an LLC and give your W-9 out, contract companies. You cannot legally work. I know people come to the States, they come for their meetings and leave, but they got really strict on that. And that's why I also get why the rules changed. Because once I studied, because I had to study it to get the visa, I had to, like, play by the rules, get interviewed by the U.S. consulate, and I kind of understood it completely. I was like, I get it. People are, before, like, people were milking the system a little bit, so they made it super intense, and I really do get it. But long story short, E2 visa, Canadians can apply for this. You start an LLC, you invest multiple six figures into creating this LLC, and then you have to make this business, basically with that investment, you use it to get the business up to a working business. So, for example, like if you're an agency like myself, you get office, it's very traditional too.
Yeah.
You get office space, you buy certain things that they think the U.S. consulate thinks that a marketing agency needs. You start to take meetings to hire, so you have basically by the time you're ready to submit, you have this like 100-page book that you created after the year of you hustling to build this business, and you have your contracted brands that are going to hire your agency for the next 5 years, because that's the visa term. You have employees that you've like vetted that are going to be W-9s and 1099. So it's like I learned
it require all of this of you.
Yeah, and before you get the visa, because the stronger your case is with how much money you put down, how many jobs you're going to create, how many companies are going to hire you, you'll get the visa if they can see the economic stimulation. So I feel like and also with having a podcast, people are like in that phase. My listeners are a lot of people who are like trying to become an entrepreneur or take that leap. I think I had no choice but to not only put skin in the game, but what it was to take insane action. And then also because a lot of this work, I technically had to be in the States and like be taking meetings, networking my face off, proving myself.
But you weren't even allowed to take.
But then I wasn't allowed to work, so like I had to essentially like nurture relationships like crazy, prove myself, give them a contract, pray my potential clients to sign me. And I told them, I was like, if you're not happy, like you don't have to sign for 5 years, just sign this, like this is a 5-year contract. And they believed in me, they were so supportive. But like I also had such a time crunch to do that in like 6 months technically, because as a Canadian, and I didn't even want to do 6 months because that's like really pushing it with your like time, and then submit the papers, and then you're back in Canada. When you submit, you're literally waiting for a phone call from the U.S. consulate to go in for an interview, to then get interrogated on everything. And then
this is insane.
It's like traumatizing. And I did this, I was 22 when I submitted everything.
You were 22 years old.
I remember that consulate meeting. Oh my God.
I don't even know if I could do this
sweating.
now.
No phone.
Owning an agency after 6 years.
I think because that was my first experience of like going through everything. I was like in that process too, like of setting up the business. I know I just like rushed through it and like really quickly. It was really stressful at that age. And I remember like even on my personal life, like I was like, you are 21, 22. I was like, you are not looking at a boy. You are not dating. You are not getting sidetracked. And I completely closed myself off. So now that I'm like, you know, I have this business, I'm like trying to be more balanced. It's so weird. It's like I go into routine so much on my like social, and I'm trying to be more balanced because I'm so structured, and I think it's because of that time of my life.
I mean, that makes so much sense because, again, looking back at your 20s, it's like where you truly kind of develop like the flavor of who you are as an adult, right?
Yeah, I love
and
that.
like, well, and for you to have gone through such a rigid system, and to like also have to like because you're not only building out a business like game plan, you're literally also
take action on it. And like the money was the big thing, I remember.
Yeah.
Like even investing in that, like and they're really big on when you set up the bank account, it's not your name, it's your LLC's name that you're hoping to get. And it's very big with this type of visa. It's like America's money. It's like the LLC. So a lot of it was like really high stress. But then I think like once I got it approved and it was like a crazy moment, it was like, now it's go time. Like, go girl. It's your time to like go create.
So let's talk about that moment. So everything gets approved. You're like, holy shit, I made it. Now what? What did the agency look like at that point? And like, what was like, especially being as young as you were, what was like the next step? Because I feel like that's almost like that would almost paralyze me a little bit to be like, holy shit, I made it through.
I'm so excited. I'm big on law of attraction.
Yeah.
And I'm so big. Like I think during this time I had nothing to rely on but faith and like a mindset. And I made every single person around me at that time only say you're getting the visa approved. If anyone said, oh, what if this? I did not entertain that thought. And that's like
God,
a big part of me with law of attraction. It's like I studied the principles of law of attraction, and I acted as if I literally went as far as I got a lease.
Wow.
So if I didn't get this visa, I was telling my parents, I was like, you will have to deal with this lease because I signed it for a year. And then I even went as far as once I got my interview date, I booked a flight back to LA after the interview date, knowing that I would get it approved because I had that much faith.
You went all in.
I went all in on law of attraction.
All in. But honestly, if
you gotta be all big on law.
Yeah, if
that's something in the law of
attraction. Yeah, if you believe in it and you're fully practicing it, it literally worked out and came through.
Yeah, it was so insane. But once I got it, I honestly, and it's, I even think about this now, like, we sometimes, like, as entrepreneurs, we're like, oh, once I hit 6 figures, once I hit 7 figures, then I'll take that vacation, or then I'll take that break. And I think my thing I was always saying is, like, oh, once you get your visa approved, then you can, like, enjoy time with friends, then you can, like, say yes to dating now, like, you've, like, you can have a social life. And you know what's the crazy thing? The crazy thing is, like, once I got that visa, I was like, wow, it's go time. Like, now I have to fulfill this visa. Yeah. And I kind of, like, stayed in that whole, like, grind, hustle, Gary Vee, like, I love Gary Vee, though. I know, like, I'm just saying, like, I, like, really kind of went even harder once I got here. And it was but it's so great and so fulfilling. But I feel like now as, like, my wiser self, now at 28, I'm like, okay, let's enjoy this process. And I think a lot of our mutual friends, you, Kaylee, Danielle, the Clear STEM girls, like, it's so awesome to be living here and be, like, close with everyone. Like, I'll go on a walk with Kaylee because we live so close, and, like, it ends up being, like, therapy as founders and friends, like, with just, like, going through different things, and you learn so much from being here. So I feel like now I'm starting to have more of the balance that I would have told my younger self to have. But when I got the agency, it was kind of like,
it's really funny that we actually, I mean, because I started my agency at 22. So it's interesting that we both have so many. Now? I'm 29. About to turn 30.
We're like the same.
Yeah. Wow. But it's funny that you chose an agency and you were saying, like, it's go time. I felt like I dabbled in my early 20s of, like, what am I actually supposed to be doing? Like, am I actually supposed to be, like, on top of this business, or is it just something that makes me money? And I remember thinking that I had such this crazy ambition for what I thought success looked like. And I spent most of the years in the agency feeling like it was not a success because I had, like, this crazy idea of what success looked like. And it really wasn't until, like, the last couple years, honestly, until, like, really around 2020, where I started to actually be like, wait a minute, this is, like, a business that can, like, work to what I want it to be and to, like, what I want my life to look like. How has Grow the Social, how have you kind of adjusted this so that you can have a balanced lifestyle, so you can do more of those things?
I also feel like throughout this time, like, whenever I'm like, oh, you were really hustling, like, you didn't do anything social, like, when you were working so hard. I'm, like, so grateful for that time in my life because it really strengthened, like, my self-awareness, my journaling practice, like, moving to LA and, like, being alone in this scary environment and, like, having no family, like, not being even legal to be here. It's, like, so many different emotions. And I think the only thing that got me through was, like, my prayer, my faith, my meditation routine, my journaling. And I think, like, that's really helped me gain clarity in my entrepreneurial path because the business has really shifted into a full service PR, like managing influencers and doing all PR for brands. So influencer campaigns, like, even when we touch events, it's like, it's the fun part. It's like, okay, like, the guest list, curating really great clientele for them to get exposure in front of, and, like, helping them with PR is so sexy on social. It's like, but I truly, like, I will always would have dreamed to, like, be in the role that I am right now. But when I started, it was a lot of, like, social media marketing, like, all the other elements of it. But then I think over the years of growing in my like, industry, and then making these, like, bigger brand connections and serving clients that are a lot bigger, that are talent, I'm so grateful to, like, now be fully in the PR space. But I feel like it doesn't like that whole element doesn't come unless you like really know what your passions are, because you have to, I feel like both of us, it's like for the work that we do, you kind of have to be obsessed with it and love it, because I work all the time, but I love it. I love what I do, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, sure. So as you have this agency, when did you start falling in love with podcasting, or what gave you the idea to create the podcast?
So when I was just figuring things out, didn't even have my visa yet. I was here hustling, meeting people, figuring things out, just trying to be a sponge and like also learn a lot with business, because I didn't, school doesn't teach you how to be an entrepreneur.
No.
Like, you got to be resourceful. I remember like meeting someone in LA at a coffee shop, and because one of the things I was doing, it's so funny how like things change, because like now I kill to like just work from home and be a hermit and get shit done. But when I was here figuring out my visa, I was like, you're not allowed to work from your Airbnb. You have to work only remote, because that's where opportunity is. You're in LA, girl. Like, you only got to be out in the scene. And I just feel like throughout that time of like meeting people, putting myself out there, I love coffee, I love good vibes, and I was like always really positive, and I was like, you know what? The people I'm putting myself out there to meet, whether that be LinkedIn, Instagram, DMing these different founders and leveraging my age and my energy to get connected with them, I was like, I need to record this, because I was sharing so much on social, and a lot of people from my hometown were like, that's so crazy, like, wow, you're in LA. I was like, I need to share more of this. Let me share. What if I could record these coffee conversations that I'm having with these founders that are giving me the time of day? And obviously, as you know, having a podcast, that shifted really quickly, because you can't just do this at a coffee shop. You got to be in a room. You got to have the proper mic. So that it started right away, kind of through wanting to connect.
So, I mean, it's such a beautiful idea to be recording these conversations with founders. And I mean, you have such a robust network, right? Like, you've interviewed pretty much every major CPG brand founder, I think, on the West Coast that's available to you. So where was the shift from, I'm going to start a podcast, to now you're taking this podcast and you're making events out of it, which I think is so incredible, because it's something where it marries both. It marries the value that you're bringing to the listener, but then also the networking opportunity and the chance for brands to also get in front of your audience. So where did that idea come from?
Yeah, so it's so funny, because these events, because I'm not a Whitney, okay?
Oh my God.
I'm not an event planner, so these event dates for me are like traumatizing.
I mean, you're killing it though.
2021. I remember that first one. I remember every day I was like updating. I was on a call with my website designer, and she was like, because we were updating the site to just like recap. We put all our events on there, and it was so funny. She was like, "How are you saying all these dates? Like, because they're random dates, right? Like November 30th and like May 17th. Like, I was like, they're like traumatizing, because you so much goes into them.
There's a lot that goes into
events. Queen of events. Literally the queen. I think through truly, because there's two parts to it. There's number one, like the pure passion for the event. Like when I moved here, I was struggling to find events that were not on like meetup.com, that weren't like okay, when you were trying to build a network, and I'm just gonna be really open here. When you're trying to build a network with like high performers, for you, let's use you as an example. Your type of clientele is not just a brand. It's a brand that can pay this, like, work with the best of the best agency and event marketing and like top agency in LA, and pay that price that comes with it, because that's what they're getting, all that value. And those types of clients are not the free meetup.com at Coffee Bean.
No, they're not.
Like, they're not there. And like when I moved here and like I was trying to figure it out, and people were like, oh, like I got that advice and I went to those things. I was like, how am I supposed to find clients that are going to invest in a social media marketing agency?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't add up. And then I feel like through when I'm that like main story of wanting people to meet, I think because I grew such a crazy network, I was like, I want to create a space where everything can come full circle. I can have influencers, because I've been working on the talent side. I have all these like great connections with influencers and managers and other agencies.
Aww.
So I wanted to bring them together. I wanted to bring all the founders together. I wanted to bring also people like me who are in my community who are coming to LA maybe, or maybe they live here, who would kill to get into the room with those people. That's like what birthed it. I wanted to bring all these people together because I would have killed to come to something like that and meet like 100 people that I could either like have as clients or have as friends. And then part 2 to that is being in the PR space and working on the brand side and the talent side. I was like, wow, I also feel like brands would invest in this because the demo I'm curating, they would love to get their product in front of.
Yeah.
And then I also think like the content of the event was doing a live recording.
Yeah.
And I think like if I could get these like big influencer founders like who move the needle and maybe have like 5 million followers of and they influence, and I can put them on a panel, that even more will generate more buzz, and then I get to interview them live and everyone will soak up value. Kind of like I wanted to create these things where everything came full circle.
I mean, I think it's such, number one, an ingenious idea, but even to hear you speak to it, it just makes so much sense. And I love that you've taken an opportunity and you're so driven by like, what would I have needed back when I first started out? And I think that's why these things for you are so in alignment, and it really comes through, and people get so excited about what you do with both the podcast and the events, is because it feels like there's so much value being provided, and it's actual true aligned value. It's not just kind of puffed up networking groups. It's not just kind of a free for all.
It's like very intentional. I know I get hit up right now all the time to like do more. Like when's the next one? I'm like, I'm not trying to do like one a month because like it's not like it takes so much intention.
Yeah.
And it's the coolest thing because like when it comes together, like literally daily I get DMs from people, and I love to connect people. And like one guy was like, hey, who was the guy at your event who has this business? Like, I would love to connect with him. And then you can make those intros. But then he was like, then he DM'd me today and was like, thank you so much. I literally, like, he's going to be working with me now. And it's like those types of things, like if we didn't curate those spaces with that type of people, like those types of deals and things wouldn't go down. You know?
Absolutely.
So it's like so fulfilling.
So let's kind of move into kind of the marketing conversation here. So I mean, I have guests on. Really, the topics of conversations for the Influence podcast is around how they built their business and how they created this level and power of influence. So for you, I'm very interested to hear the way in which you work and how you leverage kind of your community from a marketing perspective, whether that's on social media, whether that's your podcast, things like that. Like, what is the needle mover for you to not only get clients, but then also to keep building this community?
Yeah, like what do I do essentially to build that? Okay, so everyone's always like, oh, how do you build your network? I think I'm huge on adding value because if you are not approaching like every relationship, how can I add value versus how cringe is it to you now at this stage, like when someone's like, can I pick your brain? Time is so valuable, and like even 30 minutes of someone picking your brain can like, it's not serving you right now. And it's like, so I feel like from a younger age, it was always like, how can I add so much value to whether that be a potential client that I want to close, or even with talent I work with. I think that through bringing deals to girls before they're like even right now, like as I'm getting a lot of inquiries for girls to like girls or guys, but like to manage, I'm always like, especially with talent, I think that your brand, who is your manager, it's a big role. It's almost like we have to date for you to understand the value I'm going to bring, because I've heard so many influencers work with someone who like promised the world and then under-delivered, and that is never my intention. So even like in this capacity, as like an example, when I was just in New York, I had a couple girls looking for representation. I was like, why don't I just start pitching you to brands, get you in some campaigns, and you can experience like what it's like working with like myself and my team to like put you in a campaign, execute on it, and then like we won't sign anything, nothing exclusive, nothing. Like I'll show value to you, and then we can build an authentic relationship and see even if we mesh well, like on me handling your everything around that deal, like contracts. There's so much more to it. So I think it's always like, adding value and showing that and like nurturing these relationships and not, I feel like people can feel energy.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've noticed that too, even with like closing a big brand as a client. It's like, well, if I am like pushing them, like they can feel that energy. You gotta be like in an abundant state.
It's so true. There's such a level. It's funny because I actually did a whole podcast on this because it was right in around 2020 where I started noticing like the scarcity energy inside of the agency and actually how to work and build and grow and scale the agency just through more of an abundant mindset. But I like this because I like offering value. And what you said about like the can I pick your brain for 30 minutes, it's like literally one of my biggest pet peeves. Like I think that it's so it's such an honor when people want to ask for your advice.
Yeah.
But it's also at this point where it's like I would much rather approach someone and be like, hey, how can I serve you? What can I do right now? Because there's something that I would really like to ask you, and I want to make sure that I'm also showing up as a value add as well. And then it levels the playing field. Then it's not so much of like you needing their attention or asking for their help. It actually brings you up to like a partner perspective.
Yeah, it's a level of respect they'll have for you. Like I like respect people so much. Like you don't look at them as as someone who just like wants to kind of like drain your energy. You look at it as an energy giver and someone that could lead to so much more for that relationship too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love talking about all this with you. And you're so dialed in right now with the influencer community. You're so dialed in with the CPG community. Where do you see marketing and PR going right now in today's age?
I think truly everything, your industry with event marketing, I was going to say this too, like after our recording, my industry, I think truly it's all going to boom, and it's all your mindset around it, because I've had like influencers tell me like, oh, like my manager said that there's no money in influencer deals and that's why they haven't got me a deal. I'm like, well, that's an abundant mindset, and also I think that's a weak excuse, because maybe there's like 100 brands cutting back on spend, but there's 1,000 brands adding spend, or it's just like the right types of. I also think it's like the right types of talent and community that you have, but I truly believe that everything is going to continue to compound and grow, especially like I see the value so much with brands doing events, because it builds your community in real life, and it just makes so much sense, because when people can experience something real, they're forever in your network. So I really believe in that, and like that touches on PR, like with work that I do with like getting brands to work with certain clientele. It all comes down to like, how can you get your brand out there to the world? How can you continue to scale, even if it's a personal brand and it's traditional press and PR? Like, you want to be out there and be a voice to reach more people. I think that the ways to do that, the strategies just get more advanced, and that's why I feel like my industry, especially because I'm very custom with how I work with each brand, it's going to continue to grow and evolve.
Yeah, I agree. I think the creator economy is here to stay. I know that I think that the whole scarcity energy around the recession, whether or not we're in a recession or there's coming to be a recession, I think that we're seeing a lot of brands kind of back off that budget that they were spending. But I think again, like, it has become an economy.
And I think it's motivating to people like us who are dancing in that, because I feel like if brands are gonna, and I think everyone should be obviously cautious where they spend, but it's like, say I have $70,000 to put into an event, well then I'm going to make sure I work with the best people with that 70 and give it to like someone who I know is going to do a great job, because you can also put money. I hear this all the time, like when I'm talking to brands about doing their influencer campaigns, they put like, even if it's 5K, like it can go, like everything is relative money, right? But I just believe like, yeah, you can literally throw 5K down the drain if you work with the wrong talent. Yeah, of course. But that's why it's like, I think it makes us as business owners, it's more like incentivizing, because I'm like, I just got to be the best at what I do. The best. So like, if people have money to spend on influencers, they only come to
there's a market for everything.
They only go to your agency, because it's like, it is an investment. And I do believe they're powerful.
Yeah,
You put them in the right way.
So I want to ask you if you could give a piece of advice to maybe someone that is starting out or that really wants to get into the realm of work that you do, or just wants, or maybe it's just a piece of advice on just your mindset. Because I know you have this incredible mindset. You really you really do. And if you guys follow Ayesha on her social, it's like so motivating just to see how you structure your days.
I love mindset stuff.
It's amazing. So if you had one piece of advice that you could share on the show today, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things.
I know.
But I would say continuing to do the inner work on yourself and strengthening your inner game. And this will apply for your personal life. Now that I'm being open and really trying to have more balance and date in LA and be open, and I'm wow, it's such an inner game, this dating world.
I was gonna say, how's dating in LA? I've been off the market for 4 years, so I'm like an old grandma when it comes to dating.
I love, but that's amazing. I feel it's your external world is a reflection of your inner world. So because I've really worked on my inner world and the perspectives, the mindsets, the stories I tell myself, it's made my external world what I want it to be.
That's beautiful.
But I really feel it's all what you choose. I was with some girlfriends on the weekend and we were talking about dating in LA because they're in the same stage that I'm in, and they had different stories around it that weren't so positive.
Yeah.
And I'm wow, my experience has been a little bit different, but I also think it's because I'm really cautious of the narrative I'm running. And I think that pertains to everything, right? Your work life. What narrative are you choosing? Is there an abundance of clients? And then also, I will say, because trust me, I know we're really high energy on this episode, but I remember eating shit for so long, not closing a client, going to so many meetings, taking so many discovery calls. I remember not getting anyone to invest in me and not giving up and telling myself okay, more no's, but that just means there's gonna be a yes soon. It's the reframe.
Wow. I love that so much. And honestly, I think that this is what makes you such a great entrepreneur is this frame of thinking. Because I think that the more and more time I spend in entrepreneurship, but also working with other founders and working with brands or creators, or just even sitting down chatting with you, there's this level of, they call it grit, or they call it tenacity, right? And it's the push through. And it's a lot of times I think people chalk that up to ambition, but honestly, at the end of the day, it is more of the mindset. It is more of the reframing. It's not, I'm never giving up. It's that if there's so many no's, eventually there's going to be a yes.
Yeah. And
it's kind of shifting that. And I think some of the greatest entrepreneurs or some of the greatest founders have that wiring.
Yeah, it's because I didn't go to school for this.
No,
I did not.
No one tells you there's going to be a lot of no's.
They don't teach us in school.
No.
You just gotta do the inner work so much. And I'm speaking from this state right now, and it's exciting because it's when I'm 30, when I'm 35, I can only imagine if I keep going, doing the inner work, where I'll be on that stage.
Yeah. Oh my God. Ayesha, this has been such an awesome interview. You were just such a light. Where can everyone find you? Where can you?
You are so fun to podcast with. You are such a natural. You always feel the difference when you podcast with podcasters.
Yeah, it's just because then it just becomes a fun conversation, huh?
So thank you for this. It's been incredible. But I'm on social, of course. Instagram's my favorite. So at Ayesha Sehra, and I know the spelling. I hate when people spell it out.
Spell it. Yeah, spell it for us.
Ayesha.
And it's Ayesha.
Ayesha, yeah, and then Sehra.
Making sure that.
Yeah, and then last name is Sehra, and then easier at Coffee and a Good Vibe everywhere. Instagram, I post there more than my personal because I'm so passionate about that account. And then Coffee and a Good Vibe on podcasts, on all podcasting platforms, and we have the website and everything. But even if you just go to Instagram or the podcast, it'll link to everything else.
And if you guys are in LA or in San Diego,
oh my gosh, if you're in LA or near LA, or you want to come to LA, plan your trip around one of our events.
Hell yeah.
And New York. We do a lot in New York. Hopefully we'll continue to grow, and also we'll work with Whitney, I know there'll be a collab. I know there'll be like some type of event we'll do
Yes,
together.
we have an event coming up. It's not, unfortunately, it's not open to the public just yet. But you guys could, if you guys are in New York, you guys can hear Ayesha moderate an incredible panel. I'm sure this episode will come out after, but it'll be really awesome. We're teaming up with ClearStem. You're going to be doing a live podcast panel with also Lindsay and Krista from Almost 30, which is so insane, so cool. And yeah, I mean, honestly, girl, you are just amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thanks for letting me interview you in the fabulous La La Land. And yeah, thanks for going under the influence with us.
Thank you for having me. I love this.